The glass shattered behind Rebecca as bullets tore through the penthouse windows, and she felt his iron grip yank her to the floor. Ryu Sung-min, Seoul's most feared mafia boss, the man whose girlfriend everyone whispered about in terror, except Rebecca never whispered, never cowered. And now, as his body covered hers and his dark eyes burned into her soul, she felt something impossible crack open inside her chest. In that heartbeat between danger and desire, between the girl who came to Seoul to survive and the monster who just decided she was his to protect, everything changed. Welcome to Afrokorea TV. Please like, share, and subscribe. 3 months earlier, Rebecca had arrived in Seoul with a suitcase held together by prayer and a work visa that promised survival, nothing more. The employment agency barely looked at her before sending her to the Hanamdong penthouse, the kind of address that made even taxi drivers nervous. The building rose like a glass blade against the sky, and when she stepped into the marble lobby, the security guard's eyes tracked her with a cold assessment of men who knew how to dispose of bodies. The elevator climbed 40 floors in silence. Rebecca's reflection stared back at her from the mirrored walls, dark skin that glowed like warm amber, curves that her mother said were blessings and her ex-boyfriend said were too much, natural hair pulled into a simple bun because she couldn't afford anything fancy. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman with nowhere else to go. The penthouse door opened before she could knock. A woman stood there, beautiful in the way that sharp knives are beautiful, with skin like porcelain and eyes like winter. "You're late," she said in perfect English, though Rebecca hadn't given her name yet. "I'm Choi Minacio. You'll address me as Miss Choi. Come in." The apartment stretched out like a museum of wealth, white marble, black leather, floor-to-ceiling windows that turned Seoul into a glittering toy. But what struck Rebecca wasn't the luxury. It was the coldness. Every surface gleamed, sterile and untouched, as if human warmth was forbidden here. "Your duties are simple," Minacio continued, her heels clicking across the marble. "You clean, you cook when requested, and you stay invisible. My boyfriend values privacy above all else. You will never speak to him directly. You will never look at him. You will never ask questions. Understood?" Rebecca nodded, though something in her chest tightened at the word boyfriend. She'd heard stories about the kind of men who lived in penthouses like this, the kind who kept women like Miss Choi as beautiful, expensive pets. "He comes home late, usually after midnight. You'll prepare his study, lay out fresh towels, keep the kitchen stocked with his preferences." Minacio handed her a typed list. "These are his requirements. Memorize them. Mistakes are not tolerated in this household." The first week passed in a blur of bleach and silence. Rebecca cleaned rooms that no one used, cooked meals that often went cold and untouched, and learned the rhythms of a household built on absence. Miss Choi left early and returned late, always impeccable, always cold. And the boyfriend, the mysterious Ryu Sung-min, remained a ghost, a presence felt but never seen. Rebecca knew he came home because evidence appeared like breadcrumbs through a dark forest. A jacket draped over a chair that hadn't been there before. Whiskey glasses left on the study desk, still smelling of expensive liquor and something darker. Gunpowder, maybe, or blood. Once, she found a shirt in the hamper with what looked like dried blood on the collar, and she washed it without comment, without question, because survival meant knowing when to stay blind. The penthouse had rules. Rebecca learned them through trial and error, through Minacio's cutting corrections, and the heavy silences that followed mistakes. Never enter the East Wing study when the door was closed. Never answer the phone. Never, ever be visible between midnight and dawn, when he prowled the apartment like a restless animal. But rules, Rebecca had learned long ago, were made by people who'd never had to fight for their lives. It happened on a Friday night, 3 weeks into her employment. Rebecca had stayed late to finish cleaning the kitchen after Minacio hosted a dinner party. Though party felt wrong for the gathering of cold, watchful people who'd barely touched their food and spoke in voices too low for Rebecca to hear from the kitchen. She was wiping down the last counter when she heard it, the elevator chiming, the door opening, footsteps in the foyer. Heavy. Male. Different from Minacio's sharp clicks. Rebecca froze, cloth in hand, because it was only 11:30 and he never came home before midnight, and she was supposed to be invisible, supposed to be gone. "Who's there?" The voice cut through the apartment like a blade, deep, dark, with an edge that made her spine straighten instinctively. It was a voice used to being obeyed, used to making men kneel and beg. Rebecca's heart hammered. She could hide in the pantry, but that felt cowardly, and she'd left cowardice behind in Nairobi when she buried her mother and got on that plane. So she stepped into the living room, cloth still in her hands, and met his eyes for the first time. Ryu Seung-min stood in the foyer like he owned the air itself. Tall, probably 6'2", with the kind of build that came from violence, not gyms, broad shoulders straining against a black suit jacket, powerful frame that moved with predatory grace. His face could have been carved from stone, all sharp angles and brutal beauty, with dark eyes that pinned her in place like a butterfly to a board. Blood spotted his white shirt collar. His knuckles were split and raw. He looked like exactly what he was, a monster in expensive clothes. "I'm sorry, sir," Rebecca said, and her voice came out steadier than she expected. "I was finishing the kitchen. I'll go." "Stay." One word, absolute as gravity. He shrugged off his jacket, and she saw the gun holster under his arm, the weapon sitting against his ribs like a sleeping snake. "What's your name?" "Rebecca, sir." "Rebecca." He said it slowly, tasting each syllable, and something in his expression shifted. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition, though they'd never met before. "You're the new maid. Minasio mentioned you." He walked past her into the kitchen, and Rebecca's body moved before her brain caught up, following him even though every instinct screamed to run. He moved to the sink, began washing the blood from his knuckles with a kind of casual efficiency that said this was routine, that coming home covered in evidence of violence was just another Friday night. "You're not afraid," he observed, not looking at her, focused on scrubbing his hands clean. "Why is that?" "Fear doesn't help, sir. It just makes you freeze when you should be moving." Now he looked at her, really looked, and Rebecca felt the weight of that gaze like a physical touch, dark eyes that saw too much, that read her like she was written in a language only he spoke. "Where are you from?" "Kenya originally. Nairobi. Long way from home." He dried his hands on a towel, and she noticed how careful his movements were, controlled and precise, like everything he did was calculated 3 steps ahead. "You like Seoul?" "It pays better than Nairobi, sir." The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but something close. "Honest. I like that." He moved closer, and Rebecca's breath caught because he smelled like expensive cologne and danger, like smoke and leather and something indefinable that made her pulse quicken. "Most people lie to me. They tell me what they think I want to hear." "I don't know you well enough to know what you want to hear, sir." "Ryu," he corrected softly. "When it's just us, you call me Ryu." That felt dangerous, intimate in a way that crossed lines she couldn't afford to cross. "I don't think Miss Choi would approve, sir." Something dark flickered across his face at the mention of his girlfriend. Irritation, maybe, or something colder. Minasio doesn't control everything. He stepped back, gave her space to breathe. "You should go home. It's late." Rebecca nodded, gathered her things, and when she passed him in the doorway their shoulders almost brushed, close enough that she felt the heat radiating from his body, close enough that she caught his sharp intake of breath. She didn't look back, but she felt his eyes on her all the way to the elevator. The next morning, Rebecca found an envelope on the kitchen counter with 500,000 won inside and a note in sharp, masculine handwriting, for working late. R. It was too much. Way too much for one night of overtime. But when she tried to return it through Minasio, the woman's eyes went cold and dangerous. "If he gives you something, you take it," she said quietly. Refusing his generosity is an insult. Don't insult him. So Rebecca kept the money and tried to ignore the way her hands shook when she tucked it into her purse. The next few days shifted the gravity of the penthouse. Suddenly, Ryu was everywhere. He came home earlier. He spent time in the common areas instead of hiding in his study. He asked her questions about her day, her family, whether she liked Korean food if she got homesick, and listened to her answers with the kind of focused intensity that made her feel like the only person in his universe. Min Seo noticed. Of course she noticed. "You're getting comfortable," she said one afternoon, finding Rebecca restocking the bar in the living room. "That's a mistake." Rebecca kept her eyes on the bottles. "I'm just doing my job, Miss Choi." "Your job is to be invisible. Lately, you've been very visible." Min Seo moved closer, and Rebecca smelled her perfume, expensive and cloying, like flowers rotting in water. Songmin has a curious nature. He likes new things. But he gets bored easily, and when he gets bored, things break. People break. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Rebecca met her eyes. "I understand you're warning me. I appreciate the concern." "It's not concern." Min Seo smiled, sharp as broken glass. "It's a courtesy." The last maid who thought she was special ended up back in the Philippines, missing 2 fingers. Accidents happen in households like this. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Rebecca nodded slowly, and Min Seo left, satisfied that her message had landed. But that night, when Ryu came home and found Rebecca cleaning the terrace, he didn't ignore her. He joined her outside, leaning against the railing, soul glittering 40 floors below. "Min Seo spoke to you today," he said. "Not a question." "Yes, sir." "What did she say?" Rebecca considered lying, but he'd know. Men like him always knew. "She reminded me to stay professional." And by professional, she meant invisible. His jaw tightened, and Rebecca saw the anger there. Banked and controlled, but definitely present. "She doesn't own you, Rebecca. She's your girlfriend, sir. She has a right to. She's a business arrangement." The words came out flat, dead, and when he turned to face her, Rebecca saw something raw in his expression. "My family arranged our relationship. She provides respectability. I provide protection and status. That's all it is." Rebecca's heart hammered because this was intimate. This was the kind of truth that got people killed in households like this. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know." He moved closer, and the space between them felt electric, charged with something Rebecca didn't want to name. "You should know that what I feel when I look at you isn't professional, isn't arranged, isn't convenient." "Sir." "Ryu," he corrected, voice rough. "Say my name, Rebecca." She couldn't. If she said it, something would break, some barrier between employer and employee, between his world and hers, and she'd drown in the consequences. But he waited, patient as death, and finally she whispered, "Ryu." His eyes closed like she'd touched him, like hearing his name in her voice was a physical sensation. When he opened them again, they burned. "I need to know something. If there was no Min Seo, no employment contracts, no complications, would you feel this too? This pull between us?" "It doesn't matter what I feel," Rebecca said, though her voice shook. "The complications exist. Your life is. I can't even imagine your life, Ryu. And mine is simple. I can't afford to lose this job. I can't afford to become collateral damage in whatever war you're fighting. What if I promised you wouldn't be? What if I told you I'd burn this whole city down before I let anyone hurt you?" The intensity in his voice terrified her, because she believed him. She could see it in his eyes, the capacity for absolute devotion, absolute destruction, absolute possession. This was a man who loved like a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. "Then I'd say you don't know me well enough to make promises like that," Rebecca whispered. "And I don't know you well enough to believe them." Something like pain crossed his face, but he stepped back, gave her space. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm pushing too hard." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "It's just, I've never felt like this before. Like I'm losing my mind. Like I can't breathe when you're not in the room." Rebecca's chest ached because she knew exactly what he meant. She felt it too, the pull, the hunger, the way her body oriented toward him like a compass finding north. But she was smarter than her desire. Had to be. "I should go," she said quietly. "It's late." He nodded, didn't stop her, but as she walked past him she heard him say, soft as a prayer, I'll wait, Rebecca. However long it takes. I'll wait for you to trust me. That night, Rebecca lay in her tiny apartment and stared at the ceiling, knowing that everything had just changed, knowing that falling for Ryu Seung-min was like falling off a cliff, thrilling and terrifying and absolutely inevitable. The following week brought new rules. Min Seo started coming home earlier, her presence in the penthouse more oppressive, her eyes tracking Rebecca's every movement. She brought friends, cold, beautiful women who looked at Rebecca like she was furniture, who spoke rapid Korean and laughed at jokes Rebecca couldn't understand. But Ryu pushed back in small ways. He'd ask Rebecca to serve dinner when Min Seo hosted, forcing her to be present, to be seen. He'd leave notes with her weekly pay, small things, like your hair looks beautiful today, or I missed seeing you yesterday. Once, he left a first edition copy of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's Americana with a note that said, "Thought you might feel less homesick with this." Rebecca kept the notes hidden in her apartment, pressed between the pages of her Bible like contraband prayers. The tension built like a storm gathering force. Rebecca could feel it in the way Ryu watched her, hungry and patient. Could see it in the way Min Seo's smile grew sharper, more dangerous. Something was going to break. The only question was when and how much damage it would cause. The answer came on a Wednesday night. Min Seo was hosting another dinner, this one more crowded, more elaborate. Rebecca worked the kitchen, preparing course after course while voices filtered in from the dining room, speaking Korean mostly, occasional English, lots of laughter that sounded wrong, forced. She was plating dessert when one of the guests wandered into the kitchen, a man, younger than Ryu but with the same dangerous edge, wearing an expensive suit and a smile that made Rebecca's skin crawl. "Well, hello," he said in English, leaning against the counter. "You must be the famous maid everyone's been talking about." Rebecca kept her eyes on the dessert plates. "Can I help you with something, sir?" "Oh, I think you can help me with a lot of things." He moved closer, and Rebecca smelled whiskey on his breath. Too much cologne. "I'm Park Ji-hoon. I work with Seung-min. We're business associates." "The dining room is that way, Mr. Park." "I know where the dining room is." His hand landed on the counter next to hers, boxing her in. "I wanted to see for myself what all the fuss was about. Seung-min's been distracted lately. Not like him. Now I see why." Rebecca's pulse kicked up because this was dangerous, because she could feel the predator in this man, different from Ryu, but just as deadly. "I really need to finish." "You're beautiful," Ji-hoon interrupted, his other hand reaching for her waist. "Exotic. I can see the appeal. Tell me, does Seung-min know you're wasted as a maid? A woman like you could do very well in Seoul if she had the right protection." His hand touched her hip and Rebecca moved instinctively, stepped back hard, her elbow catching him in the ribs, not enough to hurt, just enough to create space. "Don't touch me," she said quietly, firmly. Ji-hoon's expression darkened. "You little. Is there a problem?" Ryu's voice cut through the kitchen like Arctic wind. He stood in the doorway, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. His eyes were locked on Ji-hoon, and Rebecca saw something absolutely murderous in that gaze, controlled, barely, but definitely there. Ji-hoon stepped back, hands up, smile returning but strained. "No problem, Seung-min. Just complimenting your staff. You have excellent taste and help. Get out of my kitchen." Ryu's voice was soft, deadly. "Now." Ji-hoon left quickly, and Ryu turned to Rebecca, his expression transforming, the murderous rage melting into concern, into something almost tender. "Did he hurt you?" "No. I'm fine. If he touched you." "He barely touched me, and I handled it." Rebecca's hands shook slightly, adrenaline still pumping through her system. "I can take care of myself, Ryu." "I know you can." He moved closer, and his hand came up like he wanted to touch her face, check for himself that she was unharmed, but he stopped himself, dropped his hand. "But you shouldn't have to. Not in my home. Not ever." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it sent heat curling through her stomach, made her breath catch. "Your guests are waiting," she said, trying to remember her place, trying to rebuild the walls between them that kept crumbling. "Let them wait." His eyes searched her face, intense and focused. Rebecca, I need to tell you something. I'm ending things with Minicio. Officially. My family won't like it and it'll cause problems, but I don't care anymore. I can't keep pretending when all I think about is you. Rebecca's heart stopped. Ryu, you can't. I already did. Told her this afternoon. She's moving out this weekend. He stepped closer, and Rebecca felt the wall at her back, felt the heat of him surrounding her. I know it's fast. I know it's insane. But I've spent my whole life following rules, playing roles, being what my family needs me to be. And then you walked into my home and looked at me like I was just a man, not a monster, not a dynasty, just me. And I'm done pretending I don't want you. This is crazy, Rebecca whispered, though her body betrayed her, leaning toward him. You don't even know me. Then let me know you. His hand finally touched her face, fingers gentle against her cheek, and Rebecca's eyes fluttered closed at the contact. Let me take you to dinner. Let me court you properly. Let me show you that what I feel isn't just obsession or possession, it's real. She should say no. Every logical bone in her body screamed to say no, to run, to protect herself from the inevitable fallout. But when she opened her eyes and saw the vulnerability in his face, the desperate hope, she found herself saying, "One dinner. That's all I'm promising." His smile transformed his face, made him look younger, almost boyish. "One dinner. I'll take it." He left then, returned to his guests, but Rebecca stayed in the kitchen with her hand pressed to her cheek where he'd touched her, knowing she'd just stepped off a cliff and praying someone would catch her before she hit the ground. Minacio moved out that weekend with the cold efficiency of a general retreating from lost territory. Rebecca wasn't there to witness it. Ryu had given her the weekend off, paid, with a note that said simply, "Stay away until Monday. Trust me." She trusted him, which terrified her more than anything else. By Monday morning, the penthouse had transformed. The cold, sterile museum had softened somehow, fresh flowers on the tables, warm throws draped over the leather furniture, photographs appearing on shelves that had been empty before. Pictures of what Rebecca assumed was Ryu's family, an older couple, stern-faced, a younger woman with kind eyes, a boy who looked like a smaller, happier version of Ryu. "My sister," Ryu said from behind her, making her jump. He'd appeared silently, dressed in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that made him look less like a crime lord and more like a dangerous professor. "She died 5 years ago. A car accident, though my family suspects it was arranged by a rival family. We never proved it." Rebecca's chest ached at the grief in his voice. "I'm sorry. She would have liked you." He moved to stand beside her, looking at the photograph. Ji-yeon was fearless. Spoke her mind. Refused to let our family's business define her. You remind me of her sometimes. That strength, that refusal to be diminished. "I'm not that strong," Rebecca admitted quietly. "I'm terrified most of the time. I just learned to keep moving anyway." That's what strength is. He turned to face her, and the morning light caught his features, softened the harsh angles into something almost beautiful. Moving forward even when you're scared. "I've killed men who couldn't do that." The casual mention of murder should have sent her running. Instead, Rebecca found herself asking, "How many?" "Men I've killed." His expression didn't change, didn't flinch from the truth. "Directly? 11. Indirectly through orders? More than I can count. Does that frighten you?" "It should," Rebecca said honestly. "But what frightens me more is that it doesn't. That I look at you, and I don't see a killer. I see a man who puts flowers in his home because his sister loved them, who reads Chimamanda Adichie and leaves notes that make me smile, who looks at me like I'm something precious instead of convenient. You are precious." He said it with absolute conviction, like it was a fact as solid as gravity. "You're the first real thing in my life in years. Everything else is performance, strategy, obligation. But when I'm with you, I can just be." Rebecca's throat tightened. "Ryu, I need you to understand something. I'm not like the women in your world. I don't know how to navigate power games or family politics or whatever wars you fight. If this," she gestured between them, If this is real, I need you to be patient with me. I need you to understand that I'm going to mess up, say the wrong thing, not know the rules. There are no rules with us. He reached for her hand, threaded his fingers through hers, and the simple touch sent electricity racing up her arm. Just you and me, figuring this out together. And Rebecca? I have infinite patience when it comes to things I want. And I want you more than I've wanted anything in my entire life. The dinner happened that Wednesday. Ryu picked her up from her apartment in a car that cost more than she'd make in 5 years, driven by a silent man who looked like he could break concrete with his bare hands. Rebecca wore her nicest dress, a deep burgundy wrap dress that hugged her curves, paired with simple heels and the gold earrings her mother had given her before she died. When Ryu saw her, something in his expression cracked open, vulnerable and awed. "You're stunning," he said quietly, helping her into the car. "I mean, you're always beautiful, but tonight, Rebecca, you take my breath away." The restaurant was exclusive, the kind of place that didn't have prices on menus and where everyone spoke in hushed, reverent tones. But Ryu had reserved a private room overlooking the Han River, and when the door closed behind them, the rest of the world disappeared. They talked for hours. About everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in a family where love was currency and loyalty was survival, about the weight of expectations and the loneliness of power. She told him about Nairobi, about her mother's death from cancer they couldn't afford to treat, about the desperation that brought her to Seoul. "I used to be a teacher," Rebecca admitted over dessert. "Primary school. I loved it. But after my mother died, the debts were too much. Teaching doesn't pay enough to survive and send money home to my younger siblings." "You have siblings?" "2 brothers, 1 sister. Still in Kenya. I send money every month." She smiled, though it hurt. "They think I work in a fancy hotel. They don't know I'm scrubbing toilets and washing blood out of shirts." Ryu's jaw tightened. "You won't be doing that anymore." "Ryu." "I'm serious, Rebecca. You're not my maid. You never were, not really. He stopped, seemed to struggle with the words. "You're mine. And I take care of what's mine." The possessiveness should have bothered her. Instead, warmth bloomed in her chest, unfurling like a flower finding sun. Later that night, Ryu walked her to her apartment door. The building was shabby compared to his world, paint peeling and hallways that smelled like kimchi and old cigarettes, but he didn't seem to notice or care. "I had a wonderful time," Rebecca said, fishing for her keys. "Thank you for tonight, Rebecca." He caught her hand, pulled her gently to face him. "Can I kiss you?" Her heart hammered. "You're asking permission?" "Always. With you, always." His thumb traced her knuckles, a gentle rhythm. "I've taken a lot of things in my life, without asking. But not this. Not you. So I'm asking, can I kiss you?" She nodded, couldn't find words, and he smiled, soft and genuine, and so beautiful it hurt to look at him. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, his lips soft against hers. But when Rebecca's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, something broke between them. The kiss deepened, turned. Hungry, desperate, and Rebecca felt herself melting against him, drowning in the taste of him, the feel of his hands cradling her face like she was something infinitely fragile and infinitely precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ryu pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm falling for you," he whispered. "So fast it scares me. Tell me I'm not alone in this." "You're not alone," Rebecca breathed. "God help me, you're not alone." The next few weeks unfolded like a dream. Ryu courted her with an intensity that left her breathless. Flowers delivered to her apartment every morning, dinners at restaurants where chefs prepared meals just for them, late-night conversations on his terrace where he held her against his chest, and they watched Seoul sleep. He was generous in ways that embarrassed her. Money appeared in her account, always with a note explaining it wasn't payment, it was a gift, because he wanted her siblings to have better opportunities, wanted her to stop worrying about everyone. He bought her clothes that actually fit her curves, jewelry that made her feel beautiful, books in English because he noticed she was homesick for familiar words. But more than the gifts, he gave her his time, his attention, his vulnerability. He told her about the nightmares that plagued him, dreams of his sister's accident, of the men he'd killed, of a life lived in shadows and violence. Rebecca held him through those nights, her fingers gentle in his hair, her voice soft with comfort. She told him about her own demons, the guilt of leaving Kenya, the fear that she was failing her family, the loneliness that had been her constant companion since her mother died. Ryu listened with absolute focus, never dismissing her fears, never offering empty platitudes, just solid presence and understanding. They fit together in ways that defied logic. Where he was hard, she was soft. Where she was cautious, he was certain. Where he saw only darkness in himself, she saw complexity and capacity for good. Where she saw herself as ordinary, he saw miracles. But the outside world wasn't kind to their happiness. It started with whispers. Rebecca felt eyes on her when she went to the market, heard fragments of Korean that she didn't need to translate to understand their meaning. The black woman. The foreigner. The maid who seduced the mafia boss. Then came the messages. Hateful text to her phone. Always from blocked numbers. Always in broken English. Go back to Africa. You don't belong here. He'll throw you away like garbage. Rebecca deleted them without telling Ryu because she knew what he'd do, knew the violence he was capable of, and she didn't want blood spilled on her behalf. But then someone left a dead rat on her doorstep with a note that said, "Next time it'll be you." She couldn't hide that from him. Ryu's reaction was terrifying in its controlled fury. He made phone calls in rapid Korean, his voice cold and absolute, and within hours Rebecca's apartment was surrounded by security. Men in dark suits who looked like they'd kill without hesitation, who bowed respectfully when they saw her and called her ma'am, like she was royalty. "This is too much," Rebecca protested when Ryu showed up at her door that night. "I don't need bodyguards. You do now." His eyes were hard, dangerous. "Someone threatened you, Rebecca. That means they threatened me. And people who threaten what's mine don't live long enough to regret it. You can't just kill everyone who doesn't like me," she said, though her voice shook. "Watch me." He pulled her into his arms, held her tight enough that she could feel his heart hammering against her cheek. "I told you I'd burn the city down before I let anyone hurt you. I meant it. Every word." The next day, the building manager found her apartment door unlocked. She'd left to get coffee, and two men inside, going through her things. The bodyguards handled it before Rebecca even knew what happened, but Ryu showed up within minutes, face white with rage and fear. "Pack a bag," he said, no room for argument in his voice. "You're moving into the penthouse. Tonight. This isn't negotiable." "Ryu, I can't." "They were in your home, Rebecca. In your home." His hands shook as he helped her throw clothes into a suitcase. "What if you'd been here? What if they'd hurt you while I was across the city, useless to protect you?" "I can't. I won't live with that fear." So she moved into the penthouse, into the guest room at first, though they both knew it was temporary. Into his world fully, completely, with no walls left between them. Living with Ryu was intimate in ways that transcended physical proximity. She learned his routines, the way he made coffee at 5 a.m. before his workout, the meditation he practiced before dawn, the phone calls he took in Japanese and Chinese and languages she didn't recognize. She saw the man behind the monster, the humanity beneath the reputation. And he learned her, learned that she liked her tea with too much sugar and her eggs scrambled soft. Learned that she hummed when she was happy, that she read the same passages in her Bible over and over when she was anxious, that she missed her mother so much some days she could barely breathe. They existed in a strange limbo, living together, falling deeper every day, but not yet crossing the final line. Ryu never pushed, never demanded more than she offered, though Rebecca could feel the hunger in him, see it in the way his eyes darkened when she walked past in her sleep clothes, feel it in the tension that crackled between them. The dam broke on a Friday night, 6 weeks after she moved in. Rebecca had been cooking dinner, jollof rice, a taste of home she'd been craving, when Ryu came home early, disheveled and bleeding from a split lip. She rushed to him immediately, hands gentle on his face, worry overwhelming everything else. "What happened?" Meeting went badly. His voice was rough, exhausted. Someone questioned my judgment, suggested I was getting soft, distracted, that my relationship with you was making me weak. Rebecca's chest tightened. And what did you say? I broke his jaw. Ryu caught her hands, pressed them against his chest, where his heart hammered. Then I told everyone in that room that you weren't a distraction. You were the point. That everything I built, everything I fought for, it all meant nothing if I couldn't choose you. If I couldn't have this. Us. Then what was the point of any of it? Tears burned Rebecca's eyes. Ryu. They think love makes me weak, he continued, his hands coming up to frame her face. But they're wrong. You make me stronger, fiercer, more dangerous than I've ever been. Because now I have something worth protecting. Something worth killing for. Worth dying for. Don't say that, Rebecca whispered, though her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. Don't talk about dying. Then let me talk about living. His forehead pressed against hers, breath mingling with hers. Let me show you what you mean to me, Rebecca. Please. I need you to know. To feel it. The kiss ignited like lightning striking dry grass. All the weeks of restraint, of careful distance, of sleeping in separate rooms while wanting to tear down walls, it all combusted in that moment. Rebecca gasped against his mouth, and Ryu lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her through the penthouse. They made it to his bedroom in a tangle of desperate kisses and fumbling hands. Ryu laid her on his bed like she was something sacred, his eyes dark and burning as he looked at her. Tell me you want this, he breathed, kneeling over her, hands shaking slightly where they rested on either side of her head. Tell me you want me, not because I give you things or protect you, but because you feel this madness too. I feel it, Rebecca gasped, pulling him down into another kiss. God, Ryu, I feel it. I'm terrified and exhilarated, and I've never wanted anything more than I want you right now. What happened next was beyond words, beyond description, an exploration and claiming and surrender that left them both shaking, gasping each other's names like prayers. Ryu was gentle and fierce, worshipful and possessive, and Rebecca gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back, every wall finally crumbling between them. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on their skin, hearts still racing. Ryu held her like she might disappear, his face buried in her hair, hands tracing endless patterns on her back. I love you, he whispered into the darkness. I know it's too soon. I know I should wait, should be strategic, but I can't. I love you, Rebecca. Completely. Absolutely. Terrifyingly. Rebecca's chest ached with the weight of it, the beauty and terror of being loved like this. I love you too, she whispered back. It scares me how much. Good scared or bad scared? Both. She tilted her head to look at him, traced the sharp line of his jaw. Good because I've never felt this before, never knew I could feel this. Bad because I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For you to realize I'm not worth all this trouble. You're worth everything, Ryu said fiercely. And nothing's going to go wrong. I won't let it. But even as he said it, Rebecca felt cold dread settle in her stomach, because in her experience, happiness this intense never lasted. The universe always demanded payment. She fell asleep in his arms, trying not to think about the price they'd eventually have to pay. Rebecca woke alone. The bed beside her was empty, sheets cold, and panic seized her chest before she heard the shower running. She exhaled slowly, heart still hammering, and noticed the note on the pillow where Ryu's head had been. Didn't want to wake you. Meeting at noon, back by 3. Stay in the penthouse today. Please. R. The please felt ominous. Rebecca showered in the guest bathroom, couldn't bring herself to use his, not yet, felt too vulnerable after last night, and dressed in comfortable clothes. The penthouse felt different now, like she'd crossed some invisible threshold. This wasn't just where she lived. This was home. His home. Their home. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She was making breakfast when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Rebecca. A woman's voice, Korean accent, vaguely familiar. This is she. This is Choi Minesio. We need to talk. Every muscle in Rebecca's body tensed. I don't think that's a good idea. You're right, it's a terrible idea, but necessary. Minesio's voice was cool, controlled. Meet me at the cafe on Gangnam Boulevard in 1 hour. Come alone. If you bring Sungmin's security, I'll disappear and you'll never know what I have to tell you. What could you possibly have to say to me? The truth about the man you're sleeping with. About what loving him will cost you. A pause. You think you know what he is, Rebecca. You don't. Not really. 1 hour. I'll be waiting. The line went dead. Rebecca stood in the kitchen, phone trembling in her hand, every instinct screaming that this was a trap. But curiosity and fear warred in her chest. What if Minesio knew something important? What if there was danger Rebecca didn't see coming? She left the penthouse without security, slipping out through the service entrance she'd discovered weeks ago. The cafe was a 20-minute taxi ride, ordinary and crowded, the kind of place where two women having coffee wouldn't attract attention. Minesio sat in the back corner, looking immaculate in a cream suit, though her eyes were harder than Rebecca remembered. She gestured to the seat across from her. You came, Minesio said, sounding almost surprised. I thought you might be smarter than that. I'm probably not, Rebecca admitted, sitting down. Say what you came to say. Direct. I can see why he likes you. Minesio sipped her coffee, studied Rebecca over the rim. You're different from the women in our world. Real, I suppose. Uncalculated. If you called me here to insult me, I called you here to warn you. Minesio set down her cup carefully. Sungmin is in love with you. That much is obvious. And you're in love with him. Also obvious. But love in our world, in his world, is a weapon. And right now, you've made yourself the biggest target in Seoul. Rebecca's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? The Tanaka family. Japanese Yakuza. They've been trying to expand into Seoul for years, and Sungmin's been blocking them. 2 weeks ago, they put a bounty on his head. $500 million won. But Sungmin is too well protected, too careful. So now they're targeting you instead. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too bright. Why would you tell me this? Because I'm not heartless. Minesio's expression softened slightly. And because despite everything, I don't hate you, Rebecca. You didn't seduce him away from me. Our relationship was already dead. You just gave him a reason to finally end it. She leaned forward. But these men, the Tanaka family, they don't care about your innocence. They'll take you to hurt him. They'll torture you to break him. And then they'll kill you both. Rebecca's hands shook. Does Ryu know? Of course he knows. Why do you think he's had you surrounded by security? Why do you think he asked you to stay in the penthouse today? Minesio's voice gentled. He's at a meeting right now trying to negotiate a peace treaty, offering them territory, money, whatever it takes to get them to leave you alone. He's giving up his power for me? The thought made Rebecca's chest ache. He'd give up everything for you. That's the problem. Minesio stood, dropped money on the table for the coffee. I don't know if his plan will work. The Tanaka family doesn't negotiate from positions of perceived weakness, and love makes him weak. So, I'm telling you this as a courtesy, woman-to-woman run. Leave Seoul. Go back to Kenya. Disappear before they take you, and use you to destroy him. She left before Rebecca could respond, melting into the crowd on the street. Rebecca sat frozen, Minesio's words echoing in her head. She should go back to the penthouse. Should tell Ryu about this meeting. Should trust him to protect her. But fear and love tangled in her chest, choking her. What if Minesio was right? What if loving him got them both killed? Her phone buzzed. Text from Ryu. Meeting running long. Miss you. Stay safe. Rebecca's vision blurred with tears. She typed back, miss you too. Be careful. Then she made the hardest decision of her life. She went back to the penthouse, packed a small bag with essentials, and booked a flight to Nairobi, leaving that evening. She withdrew all the money from the account Ryu had set up for her, enough to support her siblings for months, enough to start over. She wrote him a letter because she couldn't just disappear, couldn't leave without explanation. Ryu, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not because I don't love you. God, I love you so much it terrifies me. But because I do. Because Min-eso told me about the Tanaka family, about the danger I've put you in just by existing in your life. You're willing to sacrifice everything for me, but I can't let you do that. I can't be the reason you lose your power, your position, your safety. You've built an empire, and I'm just a girl from Nairobi who got lost in a world she doesn't understand. Please don't look for me. Please don't put yourself in more danger trying to find me. Just let me go and negotiate your peace without me as a weakness they can exploit. I will love you until the day I die. That's the one thing I'm certain of. Forever yours, Rebecca. She left the letter on his bed, next to the pillow where she'd slept the night before, and walked out of the penthouse with her heart shattering in her chest. The flight didn't leave for 6 hours. Rebecca went to a hotel near the airport, cheap and anonymous, where she could hide until it was time to go. She turned off her phone because she knew Ryu would call, would text, would move heaven and earth to find her once he read the letter. She lasted 3 hours before guilt and longing overwhelmed her. She turned on her phone just to see if he'd try to contact her, just to have one last piece of him before she disappeared. 43 missed calls. 67 texts. All from Ryu. The most recent said simply, "Please. I'm begging you. Come home." Rebecca's hands shook as she read through the messages, the progression from confusion to panic to desperate pleading. He'd found the letter. He was losing his mind. And she'd done that to him. She was about to turn the phone off again when it rang. Ryu. She shouldn't answer. Should let it go to voicemail. Should stay strong. But she'd never been strong where he was concerned. Hello. Her voice cracked. Rebecca. He sounded destroyed, like he'd been screaming or crying or both. Thank God. Where are you? Please, just tell me where you are. I can't, Ryu. I have to do this. You don't have to do anything except trust me. His voice broke. Please, baby, please don't leave me. We can figure this out together. Min-eso said. I don't care what Min-eso said. She doesn't know what we are. She doesn't understand that losing you would destroy me worse than any Yakuza family ever could. She heard him take a shaking breath. I've made the deal, Rebecca. It's done. The Tanaka family has agreed to peace terms. You're not a target anymore. You never have to be afraid again. Hope flared in her chest, dangerous and desperate. What did you give them? Territory in Busan. 3 of my shipping routes. 20% of my arms trade. He said it like it meant nothing, like he hadn't just sacrificed a fortune. I'd have given them everything, Rebecca. The whole empire. All of it. Because none of it matters without you. Tears streamed down her face. You shouldn't have done that. I'd do it again. I'd do worse. Rebecca, please, tell me where you are so I can come get you. She looked around the shabby hotel room, at the packed bag sitting on the bed, at the life she'd been ready to run back to. And she realized Min-eso had been wrong about one thing. Love didn't make Ryu weak. It made him dangerous enough to negotiate peace with enemies. Made him strong enough to sacrifice pride and power for one woman. Airport District, she whispered. Hanam Hotel, room 304. Don't move. I'm coming. He arrived 20 minutes later, and Rebecca barely opened the door before he was pulling her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe, his face buried in her neck. Don't ever do that again, he said roughly, and she felt wetness against her skin, realized he was crying. Don't ever leave me like that. It almost killed me, Rebecca. Reading that letter, thinking I'd lost you. I'm sorry, she sobbed against his chest. I'm sorry. I was scared. I thought I was protecting you. You protect me by staying. He pulled back, framed her face with shaking hands. You protect me by trusting me to keep you safe. By believing that we're stronger together than apart. Can you do that? Can you trust me? Rebecca nodded, couldn't speak past the tears, and he kissed her like he was drowning and she was air, desperate and claiming and absolutely devastating. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ryu pressed his forehead to hers. Come home with me. Let me take care of you. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. Okay, Rebecca whispered. Okay, take me home. They left the hotel hand in hand, and Rebecca didn't look back. The next few months transformed everything. The threat from the Tanaka family evaporated with the treaty. Ryu had negotiated brilliantly, giving up less than he'd feared, gaining security for both of them and peace across his entire organization. But the cost had been high in other ways. His family was furious about the relationship, about him choosing a foreign woman over their carefully laid plans. His father stopped taking his calls. His mother sent letters filled with disappointment and dire predictions. Ryu burned them without reading past the first paragraph. They'll come around, he told Rebecca one night, holding her on the terrace as they watched the sunset paint Seoul in gold and crimson. And if they don't, that's their loss. You're my family now. Rebecca's career shifted too. Ryu had been furious when he learned about her teaching background, about the talent being wasted on cleaning his floors. You're going back to school, he'd announced one morning over breakfast. Getting your Korean teaching certification. I've already made the arrangements. Ryu, I can't afford. I can. And before you argue about accepting my money, remember that your happiness is my happiness. Your dreams are my dreams. Let me do this for you. Please. So Rebecca enrolled in classes, started the process of becoming certified to teach in South Korea. It was hard. The language barrier, the cultural differences, the prejudice she faced as a black woman in a predominantly Korean field, but Ryu supported her through every challenge, celebrated every small victory like it was a miracle. Their relationship deepened in ways that transcended the physical, though the chemistry between them never faded. They learned each other's languages, Rebecca picking up Korean phrases, Ryu attempting Swahili with endearing earnestness. They cooked together, her teaching him Kenyan recipes while he introduced her to his mother's bulgogi technique. They built a life together. But danger, Rebecca learned, never truly disappeared in Ryu's world. It just evolved. The attack came on a Wednesday evening, 6 months after Rebecca had almost run away. She was leaving campus after night classes when the van pulled up, doors sliding open, men in masks grabbing her before she could scream. They injected something in her neck, and the world went dark. Rebecca woke in a warehouse, hands zip-tied behind her back, head pounding. 3 men stood nearby, speaking rapid Korean she couldn't fully understand, but she caught enough: Ryu's name, money amounts, revenge. Not the Tanaka family. Someone else. Someone who hadn't gotten the memo that she was protected. Fear clawed at her throat, but she forced it down, forced herself to think. Ryu would be looking for her. He always found her. She just had to survive until he did. One of the men noticed she was awake, said something to the others. They approached, and Rebecca's heart hammered as one pulled out a phone, started recording. Message for Ryu Songmin, he said in heavily accented English, clearly for the camera. You took our territory, killed our brothers. Now we take what you love. He gestured, and another man grabbed Rebecca's hair, yanked her head back painfully. She bit back a cry, wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Let her go, she said, voice steadier than she felt. This won't end well for you. He'll kill you all. The man laughed. Maybe. But first, we make him suffer. Make him watch what we do to his pretty foreign whore. The warehouse door exploded inward. What happened next was chaos and violence and brutality that Rebecca would remember in nightmares for years. Ryu moved through the warehouse like death itself, flanked by men who fought with the precision of soldiers. Gunfire, screams, the smell of blood and gunpowder. Rebecca closed her eyes, focused on breathing, on not thinking about the sounds of bodies hitting concrete. Then strong hands were cutting her zip ties, gentle fingers checking her for injuries. Rebecca. Baby, look at me. Are you hurt? She opened her eyes and saw Ryu, covered in blood that wasn't his, eyes wild with fear and fury. I'm okay, she managed. Ryu, I'm okay. He pulled her into his arms, and she felt him shaking, felt the terror rolling off him in waves. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered roughly. When they sent me the video, When I saw you tied up, I lost my fucking mind. I knew you'd find me. She held him tighter. I always know you'll find me. Behind them, his men were cleaning up, dragging bodies, wiping surfaces, erasing evidence with the efficiency of practice. Rebecca didn't ask what would happen to the bodies. Didn't want to know. Ryu carried her to his car, wouldn't let her walk, like touching the ground where she'd been held would contaminate her. He held her in the back seat the whole drive home, face buried in her hair, hands checking and rechecking that she was whole, unbroken. At the penthouse, he ran her a bath, helped her wash the warehouse grime from her skin with the tenderness of a man handling spun glass. And when she finally broke down crying, delayed shock hitting like a freight train, he held her through it, his own tears mixing with hers. This has to stop, Rebecca sobbed against his chest. This can't keep happening. I can't live in fear of being taken every time I leave the house. It won't happen again. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet, absolute and unwavering. I'm ending this, Rebecca. All of it. The family business, the territory wars, the violence. I'm getting out. She pulled back, searched his face. You can't just leave. Your family, your obligations. I can and I will. He cupped her face, thumbs wiping away her tears. I've been building an exit strategy for months, transferring legitimate assets, setting up trusts, preparing to step away. I was waiting for the right time, but tonight proved there's no right time. There's only now. You're more important than any empire, Rebecca. You're more important than anything. What will you do? I have investments. Real estate. Legitimate businesses that have nothing to do with my family's operations. He smiled, and it was real, full of hope instead of darkness. I'll find something. Maybe I'll be a house husband. Cook for you while you change the world one student at a time. Despite everything, Rebecca laughed, watery and weak but genuine. You'd be terrible at being a house husband. Probably. But I'd be great at loving you. He kissed her forehead, gentle as prayer. That's all that matters anymore. Loving you, protecting you, building a life where you never have to be afraid again. The transition took 6 months. Ryu carefully extricated himself from his family's organization, negotiated his freedom with the kind of strategic brilliance that had made him powerful in the first place. His father finally disowned him, officially, publicly, brutally, but Ryu just shrugged and said he'd gained more than he'd lost. They moved to a new apartment, smaller than the penthouse, but theirs in a way that felt permanent. Rebecca got her teaching certification and landed a job at an international school where her background was an asset instead of a liability. Ryu invested in legitimate businesses and discovered he was just as good at building empires the legal way. They existed in quiet joy for the first time since they'd met. No threats, no violence, just the ordinary magic of building a life together. 1 year after the warehouse, Ryu took Rebecca to Jeju Island for a long weekend. They walked on black sand beaches, ate fresh seafood, watched the sunrise paint the ocean in impossible colors. On their last night, he led her to a secluded cove where someone had set up a picnic complete with candles and flowers and all of Rebecca's favorite foods. "What is this?" she asked, laughing, as he helped her sit on the blanket. "This," Ryu said, and dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring box, "is me asking you to marry me." Rebecca's breath caught. "I know I'm not easy to love," he continued, voice rough with emotion. "I know I come with baggage and a past that would terrify most people. But you've never treated me like a monster or a burden. You've just loved me, completely and fearlessly, and you've made me want to be better. To be the man you see when you look at me." He opened the box, revealing a ring that glowed in the candlelight, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, deep blue like the ocean at night. "Rebecca, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you?" "Yes," she sobbed, laughing through tears. "Yes, you ridiculous, wonderful man. Of course I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her like they had all the time in the world, like they weren't surrounded by candles and flowers on a beach in Jeju, but existed in their own universe, where only they mattered. They married 3 months later in a small ceremony, just close friends, Rebecca's siblings who flew in from Kenya, and the handful of Ryu's family members who'd chosen love over pride. It was simple and beautiful, and exactly right. The reception was held at a restaurant overlooking the Han River, and when Ryu gave his speech, he looked at Rebecca like she was the sun and moon and stars combined. "I was a dead man before I met you," he said, voice carrying across the room. "Walking, breathing, but dead inside." And then this beautiful, fearless woman walked into my home and looked at me like I was human, like I was worth loving. She's given me more than I deserve, her trust, her heart, her future. And I promise to spend every day of my life making sure she never regrets choosing me. Rebecca cried through the whole speech, and when he finished, she stood and kissed him in front of everyone, not caring about tradition or propriety, just needing him to know that he'd saved her as much as she'd saved him. Their wedding night was gentle and passionate and perfect, a celebration of everything they'd survived to get to this moment. And 9 months later, Rebecca gave birth to a daughter. They named her Jiyeon, after Ryu's sister, and when the nurse placed the tiny, perfect baby in Rebecca's arms, Ryu broke down completely, sobbing with joy and terror and overwhelming love. "I'm going to be terrible at this," he whispered, staring at their daughter with awe. "I don't know how to be a father. What if I mess her up?" "You'll be amazing," Rebecca said softly, shifting so he could sit beside her on the hospital bed, could hold them both. "Because you love fiercely and completely, and that's all any child really needs." He touched Jiyeon's tiny hand, and she gripped his finger with the instinctive strength of new life. Something in his expression transformed, went soft and vulnerable and absolutely devoted. "I'll protect you," he whispered to his daughter. "Both of you. Always. You're my whole world." Rebecca leaned against his shoulder, exhausted and happy and more content than she'd ever imagined possible. Outside the hospital window, Seoul glittered in the darkness, a city that had once felt alien and dangerous, but now felt like home. They'd survived danger and doubt and the weight of impossible odds. They'd chosen each other again and again, through every threat and fear and moment of weakness. And now they had this, a family built on love that had conquered everything, a future stretching ahead bright and full of promise, and the absolute certainty that whatever challenges came, they'd face them together. Rebecca closed her eyes, daughter in her arms and husband at her side, and felt peace settle over her like a benediction. This was the life she'd almost run from, the love she'd almost lost. Thank God she'd been brave enough to stay. Thank you for listening and watching the story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.